NVIDIA has announced their 40 series graphics cards. I've got Dominic here on a WhatsApp call so I can go through a few points. Dominic, say hello.
Hi guys, thanks for having me, Leo. Good to be doing this with you. I think this is actually my first time ever joining a Leo Says, so always good fun.
Very true, although as it's graphics, I consider this to be a Dominic Says. So actually, this is the very first Dominic Says, and I'm merely the guy doing the intro, and I'm going to defer to the expert. The setup at KitGuru, as I'm sure the audience is aware, is that I typically do Intel stuff with a bunch of cases and other bits and pieces. Luke does AMD, he's currently working on Zen 4. Dominic does graphics, both NVIDIA and AMD. And he's got a lot of stuff coming up over the next few weeks. I've just got a few processors to look forward to. Yes. So if I keep glancing down here, that's where Dominic is in my eye line. The timeline is, today's Thursday, 22nd of September. We had the NVIDIA... What was the actual event called, Dominic? It was a special thing at GTC, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a GeForce special broadcast, something like that.
Right, special broadcast. I mean, it sounds so big. Obviously, yeah. GTC being an NVIDIA event. So on Tuesday, 20th of September, we had that when we were told stuff. Aircraft... It's a Chinook going overhead. Great whacker, 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 whacker. So Tuesday, 20th September, we had Jensen telling us good stuff, most of which I think we knew already, but prices we didn't know and some details of specs we didn't know. Those are the big points. There have been a bazillion reaction videos, as in news on KitGuru saying, I'm going to look at my notes, UK prices, which are worse than dollar prices, RTX 4090 from £1,679. Just going to leave that there for a second. Anywho, that was Tuesday. Yesterday, Wednesday, we had an Editor's Day series of briefings, all of them remote, starting at 6 a.m. West Coast, 2 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Europe. Went through the day, so we finished in the evening. The Americans got to lunchtime. It was an absolute clown show, actually, if I'm entirely frank. And there were best part of 400 people involved on those calls, and it meant when we came to the Q&As it was all text, because they couldn't have 400 people all shouting away, it'd be stupid. So they were picking and answering the questions. And just to give a flavour of that very briefly, when Jensen himself popped up for a Q&A after the first of the three briefings, the first question, according to my notes, was a guy saying, "Hey Jensen, can you give us a flavour for the total addressable market for software as a service?" Which was exactly the question none of us gave a damn about. So that sets the tone. So here we are Thursday. So we've done the it's all horribly expensive, looks interesting, other stuff. And now I'm going to defer to Dominic, the voice of reason, to give us some details. So Dominic, let's kick off. RTX 4090, 450 watts, overall impressions.
I think, to be honest, it's probably what most of us were expecting. I think there's obviously been a lot of numbers bandied around in terms of 2 to 4 times faster than the 3090 Ti, but as far as I can work out, those numbers all include DLSS 3 versus DLSS 2, so it's hardly an apples to apples comparison. In terms of the raw gaming performance, we've only actually seen 2 games that don't have DLSS or ray tracing, so kind of your traditional rasterized titles, and the gains that NVIDIA have shown us appear to be about 50%, so taking that at face value, it seems reasonable, but obviously we're going to have to do a lot of our own testing to verify those claims. Yeah, a lot of testing. The main thing that strikes me, though, to be honest, in terms of the Ada architecture as a whole, based on what we heard from the announcement from Jensen and then in our briefings yesterday, to me at least, it doesn't seem like Ada is a particularly big step forward in terms of the architecture itself. It seems to me that most of the increase, at least in terms of the raw performance, is going to come from obviously the new TSMC 4N node, which has allowed them to whack in thousands more Cuda cores, obviously power draw at 450 watts, and then boost clocks significantly higher. We've heard a few new features, but they all seem to be mostly targeting ray tracing performance, so if that doesn't float your boat, I can't say at the moment I'm looking too impressed by what we've seen from Ada. It certainly doesn't seem to be, similar to the leap from Turing to Pascal, but
okay, no,
that could just be
I agree with you on those points, and I hate to say that because obviously I was hoping that you had an extra level of sophistication to your answer, whereas my gut reaction was just like, geez, is that it? On the naming front, just as a tiny point, previous generations, Tesla, Fermi, Kepler, all named after scientists. Now we have Ada Lovelace, the first one with two words. It's almost like Jensen making a point, she is Ada Lovelace. Are you going to be referring to it as Ada Lovelace or Ada Lovelace in your reviews and such like?
To be honest, I've not thought about it. I'd probably go with Ada just for simplicity. That seems to be based on most of the news I've been reading. People generally calling it Ada. I think also as well the silicon, the actual GPUs are AD102, AD103. So
right,
introducing
exactly.
Lovelace potentially complicates it further.
Totally agree, and the thing was, when I first saw, I mean, these names have been around for ages, but when you kind of hear Jensen referring to Ada Lovelace, and I was looking at the A and the D and the L, and I was thinking kind of Alder Lake, as in Intel.
Yeah,
and it was just like, which is it's just scrambled. So Ada, I'm fine with.
Yeah.
So your point about moving from Samsung 8 to TSMC 4, a process apparently developed for graphics, I mean, what that means I don't begin to comprehend. Huge increase in transistor count, a huge increase in Cuda Cores. The Cuda Cores from 30 series to 40 series, is a Cuda Core still a Cuda Core?
As far as we know, so far they've not actually released the white paper. But we got to look at the SM block diagram yesterday. It doesn't look to me like the Cuda Core itself has changed radically, nor the SM design. You've got the RT cores within the SM, which have been improved and made faster. But on a core to core, equivalating the core to cores, they seem fairly similar to what we got with Ampere, so I wouldn't have said it's changed drastically, at least from what I can work out. We're still.
Thank you for saying that, because to me it very much looked as though if they'd stuck with the previous technologies and simply changed the process and then refined a few things and updated, as you say, DLSS 3 from 2. You'd be in a similar ballpark to my mind. The process change looks like it's a huge part of the deal. Absolutely vast part of the deal.
Definitely.
Now, clearly they're going to have to do a huge amount of work to move from Samsung 8 to TSMC 4, because when you have even Qualcomm, when they dual source two different fabs, they ain't the same chip in the end. They have to kind of play to the lowest common denominator. So I imagine there's a lot of work involved. But the actual grunty hardware is like, okay. So we move down, and sorry, the other point before I move on to the to the 4080s, the memory amount of memory, the memory speed, the memory interface, it all looked very familiar.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have changed as far as I can tell. So we've still got 24 gigs of G6X on the 4090. That's over 384-bit interface. We have seen an increase to the L2 cache. Again, I think I need to dig in more to the details, but definitely on the block diagrams we saw, that has increased. I wouldn't say it's not yet at the levels of AMD Infinity Cache, but no doubt that will help give some improvement. But in terms of the raw memory specs, they all look very similar buses, apart from the 3080 12 gig, which
we'll come to that
to later. But
did you say 3080 12 gig? Or 4080 12 gig?
I might have said 3080. It's probably going to take me a few days before I've adjusted. I've
been going over this
12 gig.
When I got home after my week in Israel with Intel, talking about Raptor Lake, and the number of times when I was discussing what had gone on, and I said Rocket Lake. Utterly hopeless.
Habits. We've spent the last 3 years or the last 2 years talking about 3080s, and now I've got to kind of forget all of that.
No. Because they don't die yet. They live a lot. No, quite. So moving on. So the 4080 16 gigabytes, 320 watts here in the UK from £1,269, which is just horrible levels of money. I have up on the shelf behind me, might be able to shot a 3080, which I paid £800 or £900 here in the the depths of the virus and shortage. That was a fair price at the time. It still blooming hurt. The idea of paying $1269. So the spec of the RTX 4080 16 gig, does that look good to you?
To be honest, Leo, it's really hard to say without getting the concrete numbers. I think in terms of the spec, it looks faster than the 3090 Ti based on the numbers they're showing us. To the extent, obviously, we'll have to test for ourselves. Whether or not it looks good for the price, certainly the price increase over the actual 3080 is an entirely different matter, I think. I think if we took pricing out of the equation and we just looked at here's the 3080, here's the 4080 16 gig, on paper you'd probably be thinking, yep, that looks like a pretty reasonable upgrade. And considering the only numbers that NVIDIA have shown have all been relative to the 3090 Ti, which itself is a good 20-25% faster than a 3080. So obviously we'll have to keep that in mind. But then the pricing complicates that because the 4080 16 gig isn't replacing the 3080. It's it's more expensive than what the 3080 Ti launched for, and it's not far off the 3090 launch price. So that's obviously going to complicate things further, and it's kind of the whole point. The things something very obvious that seems to me is we kind of got to forget the naming scheme. Let's look at what's actually being replaced in terms of price to performance, and it's kind of in a new tier of its own in that kind of £1,200 range. So
no, absolutely right. Although of course once AMD comes out with their RDNA 3 products, and if they decide, as they have in the past, to price relative to NVIDIA, we'll suddenly discover there's a new 1200-ish or whatever tier that we never knew existed. It's like high-end desktop suddenly appears and then disappear, and you kind of go, oh, is that a thing? Didn't realize. Or Titan for gamers. Of course, I'm going to say this again, that the pricing from the pricing originally given in the cast was all dollars, and it was from we've got the UK 1679 3090, 1269 for the 4080 16 gig, 949, just under £1,000 here in the UK for the 12 gig. But previous generations, when they said pricing from, I mean, the pricing was nothing like that. It was leaps and bounds higher. So 1269, if it was 1500, I'd hate it, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I'm not sure. I think things could be different this generation. That would be my gut feeling. And that's partly actually why I was quite surprised to see such high prices, because everything says to me this next generation is going to be a close-fought battle, and then obviously that's in the backdrop of crypto's basically dead in the water now. No crypto miners are buying new GPUs, so I expect plentiful more supply for gamers. Plus, the worldwide economic climate. That's why I was surprised to see such high prices, but I think it also means, depending what AMD is going to bring to the table, we should, in theory, see good competition. I have actually already seen 4090 prices in Europe actually below the MSRP, so...
Do you think they're legit, or do you think they're placeholders?
That's the thing. It could well be a placeholder, but usually if you're going to do a placeholder, it's a round number.
999. Yeah, just in case someone gets an order and you want to make sure it's... But the thing is, on the pricing side of things, and I hate debating pricing before a thing comes along, because it's what are you paying for what, and if it's not available, who cares anyway? We had the news from EVGA when they did their get-together with John Peddy, Steve from Gamers Nexus, and Jay's 2 cents. It was just those three in that briefing, wasn't it? And the briefing was not recorded, not photographed, so we've got their reports on the briefing, which obviously I take at face value because they're consistent with each other. But there were a number of reasons why EVGA bailed on NVIDIA, according to EVGA. One of which was they can't make money with now EVGA graphics cards aren't straight graphics cards. They're Kingpin. They're for the win. Yeah. But custom we've designs. Recently precisely, and that costs money. In the UK, EVGA is a significant brand, but the quantity, the volume isn't huge. America, they're significant, very significant. And
40% of the AIB market according to
Right.
John Petty. So yeah,
Right. So
huge.
not to be sneezed at. So the impact on different markets. I mean, clearly in America, all the other partners, your Pallets, your Zotacs, your Asus's, MSI's, Gigabytes. I mean, they're going to be rushing for that. That's just a hello.
Yeah.
But that they recently cut the price of their top end 30 series 3090 by $1,000. And it was down, was it from $2,200 or $2,500 down to 12? They took $1,000 off the price.
Yeah.
And then they're saying, and we're now losing money on these graphics cards priced at this. So it's like, holy moly. Now, they're not necessarily representative of, say, MSI, but I mean, what it means, you can't necessarily draw a parallel, but I mean, it's the same booming market. So I'm
it
feeling,
paints a picture.
right, exactly. Thank you. Much more succinct. So I'm feeling nervy about this 16 gig from £1,269 UK. Thinking, I'm not expecting it to be less. I mean, in the past you always hope. I'm thinking more. And then we have this god awful thing, this RTX 4080 12 gigabyte version.
Yeah.
Can we just agree it's a 4070?
I think so. I think when that one lands, there's going to be a few funny intros to some YouTube reviews with plays on the 4070. I can see the thumbnails now
masking
with
tape
the
over
crossed
the
out
box.
4080. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, it's definitely, you know, I don't know if I want to come out and call it a scam, but it's certainly very misleading. It was actually something that was put to NVIDIA directly yesterday about why they called them both the 4080, and the answer kind of, as far as I can tell, boiled down to because we wanted to. It wasn't really. They didn't say much about that. I think there was also a fan Q&A that went up on the NVIDIA website today, so we can probably put a screen grab of that and give you the exact answer. But it basically said, we think it's a good GPU. We wanted to call it a 4080. But yeah,
because
I think
it's
yeah.
right, because what was, I think the wording, because I went back over that particular response, was because it is 80 series, 80 class. So we're in 30 series, 40 series, but 80 class. The new 4080 12 gigabyte is 80 class, i.e. relative to the 3080. It's like, yeah, but what's that mean? Running our internal demo, that means absolutely nothing, except it means that they can say pricing from 949. Do we think that Founders cards, and there won't be a 12 gigabyte a 4080 for 12 gigabyte, there won't be a Founders of that. So far we're talking about 3 SKUs, of which 2 will be available in Founders. Do you think Founders will be those prices mentioned so far, more, well, they won't be less, or do you think there'll be more? Top of it, just a gut instinct.
I think there'll be the figures given, the baseline figures. That's certainly what we saw last generation, and I think maybe partly why we've seen such high prices is just because I feel like NVIDIA is maybe covering their own back slightly, because traditionally, once they've set their baseline MSRP or their founders pricing, it doesn't change, which is why we had the situation we saw for the last 2 years when 3080 custom boards were going for, almost £1,500. Every now and again, if you're one of the few lucky ones, you could still get a Founders at 649 direct from the GeForce Scan websites. So
no, quite.
Yeah.
That was the thing, though, wasn't it, with the Founders, that they didn't change the price. They just restricted supply as they saw fit.
Yeah.
So, yes, Founders cards over the last couple of generations have been great. They've been really, really good products. However, try getting a hold of one. It's and the the current generation. It's not the last generation yet. The last generation of Founders was also an interesting design. It wasn't just a reference, very far from a reference design. So plenty to be talked about. I alluded earlier to the fact that 30 series is not about to die, because we're going to have this kludge where 30 series in its entirety continues a lot when the new 40 series pops up. Is this as straightforward, do you think, as the partners have got warehouses of the blessed things and therefore they have to keep on selling them because the alternative is to put them in landfill?
To be honest, Leo, it's probably not the most exciting answer, but it seems yes. Everything we've heard from a few of our own sources it sounds like they've got, you know, a vast quantity of the 30 series cards still remaining. I think, you know, they even had that slide, Jensen put up that slide in the presentation showing the new RTX family, and it had 3060, 3070, 3080 right there with the new 40 series. And usually new generation comes out, you know, it's almost like the previous generation doesn't exist to NVIDIA anymore. But
you don't want that stinky 3090.
Yeah.
And then the other curiosity. Sorry, go on.
And I was just going to say, it's looking to me like 4070 won't be until CES at the absolute earliest. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even after that, just because they've got so many of these 30 series cards, they want to get rid of them.
One of the questions, I think it's Paulie Alcorn of Tom's asked a clarification to Jensen about when Jensen's referring to Q4, because obviously all this that they're saying is share price sensitive, and the shareholders are all paying keen interest. Jensen was referring to Q4, hoping the market will right itself in Q4. Right itself, obviously being clear out the channel so we can get on and sell the good stuff.
Yeah.
And Jensen clarified that their Q4 is that their financial quarters are a month away from the calendar, so their Q4 is November, December, January, as opposed to October, November, December. So January to NVIDIA is still this year, which is all great fun. Which therefore means that yes, CES technically is December.
Still Q4.
Yeah, precisely. So therefore, you've got a fudge of 4 weeks where if they can help swing things in their favour, clear out the channel a bit more, which is problematic for launches because they're still being Q4, hoping to sort out stock levels. And the thing was, EVGA, the report was EVGA was saying we have a year's worth of 30 series products.
Yeah. I was going to say, having, you know, the righted market by Q4 does seem very optimistic to me. I think it's also I understand where NVIDIA is coming from, but then you've also got the viewpoint of the average consumer who's thinking, well, you know, the 40 series has been announced now, even though maybe my budget's still, say, £600, which could maybe get you a 3080 now. They're thinking, I don't want to buy a 3080. That's certainly what I'd be thinking. I know next gen is here or is coming soon. NVIDIA obviously wants people with anything below £900 to still buy 30 series, but I can't see how well that's going to float with most people. Maybe if you just get completely fed up and get desperate, but I was looking
on Amazon yesterday, and on a note, you can now go to Amazon and buy an Xbox Series X. Just click the button, it'll be here tomorrow for, I think here in the UK, £460 from memory. And there's a couple of game bundles available, but whoopity-doo. Point being is under 500, which therefore perfectly reasonable. Half the price of a GPU.
Right. I saw something funny actually on Reddit. Someone said, now for the price of NVIDIA's flagship GPU, I can get an Xbox Series X, a PlayStation 5, and a Nintendo Switch.
Right, and what price
just one graphics card? Yeah.
What price is an OLED LG TV?
A grand upwards. Right. If you 42, 48 inch seem to be starting around £1,000.
So OLED TV and pick a console for the price of. I mean, this is the kind of maths you're suddenly into. It's you're not messing around with percentages. I mean, this is multiples of 2 and 3, and then of course we have the fun and games that there is a suggestion that the new graphics cards are PCI Express Gen 4 interface, and while they come with the new. We're going to call it Gen 5 power connector, but I mean it's technically a high power 12 volt multi-pin with those row of sensors on it. The suggestion is that NVIDIA's holding back from the rumoured 600 watt versions because at the moment, until you have an ATX3 power supply, that would be bad news. So as we think the new power supplies start to roll through, then potentially RTX 4090 Ti and RTX 4090 Titan. So what? $2,000, $2,500?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think NVIDIA has been a lot more deliberate with the SKU spacing this time, in that there's a much bigger difference between 8102 for the 4090 and then 8103 for the 4080 16 gig. Whereas with the 30 series, you obviously had all the 80 SKUs and 90 SKUs were all using GA102, so you didn't have, wasn't much room between them at all. Like the 3080 Ti was basically a 3090 with half the VRAM, which itself was only 10-15% faster than a 3080. So there's significantly more room, both above the top spec of the 4090 and below it as well. So I think 4080 Ti, 4090 Ti, probably 4070 Ti, whenever that happens, there's a lot more room. I think NVIDIA's probably waiting to see what happens with RDNA 3. I think if they can sell you 4090s as the clear flagship, for the next year, and then do 4090 Ti when maybe yields have improved, obviously there's more ATX 3.0 power supplies on the market, that to me would make sense. But I can't imagine they'll be rushing it out.
Did you note, by the way, the little joke they put in at one point, the little post-it note or whatever it was, which said Ti or Ti?
No, I didn't actually, but yeah, I know that's often a big case of discussion. All these announcements.
But it's sort of intriguing because it suggests NVIDIA has complete self-awareness. We had a joke previously with Jensen with a leather jacket. I can't remember what the gag was. The point is, he knows what people think. He knows what people are saying. And the a tie. It's like, no, Ti, for the love of God.
The 3080 Ti.
Yeah, right, which has just been mocked to the rafters. But the thing of it is that they are sticking with it. And the implication then is that, obviously, so far we have these 2-3 models of the new thing. So for all we know, there won't be a Ti or Ti 40 series. But there will, won't there? There won't, they could go... Right, but they could go to some other naming instead. It's a little like Intel has just brought back TikTok. New TikTok. It's like, really? And I asked, but now there's this video thing called TikTok. Do you think that's the greatest idea? And I got this blankest of looks. It was just like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, you don't think there might be some confusion? I say TikTok and people think I'm talking about it's a whole different thing. But anywho, Ti. So well done, NVIDIA. You're aware. Please don't use it ever again. We hate it, but I hate it. Do you like the Ti nomenclature? Do you think turbo or plus or anything else, or do you just not care?
I definitely don't think it means what it used to anymore. I think it was always 980 you'd buy for now, 980 Ti next year would give you the almost Titan class performance for whatever it would be, half the price. But now it seems to be, it's just anything Ti will just fill a gap where maybe AMD's released something which we don't have a direct competitor for. It's not quite the enthusiast thing where you'd see Ti and think, yes. Like, I remember when I bought two 1080 Ti's and ran them in SLI back in 2017, and that for me was like the absolute pinnacle of enthusiast GPU. But now you've got, I'm sure almost every SKU they've done has now had a Ti, so it's kind of worn off for me. It's just
true, and as has SLI or NVLink.
Yes,
dead. And I've got some bridges on the shelf behind me, which I think I paid £40 a piece for different spacings.
Those high bandwidth ones. Yeah.
So I don't mind that at all. Thanks. But seeing goodbye to that, because every time I've used Crossfire or SLI, it's been an NVLink. It's been hit and miss whether it's actually going to help or hinder performance. I mean, it's so no, kissing that goodbye. Happy about. When it comes to a quick thought about mobile graphics in laptops. So with the previous generations, we've had things like Max P and Max Q and such like in namings, and very often it pretty much boiled down to me I don't care what the chip's called, it's how much power has it got, unless you're talking like MX down at the bottom end. Once you're into the big boys, is it 95 watts, 85 watts, 115 watts, 150 watts, makes that's pretty much everything there is to it. With these more beefy graphics, do you think that there's going to be significant advantage from having the new Ada graphics in a laptop? Because
Yeah.
it seems to me once you cripple the power,
That's a great question. I think
you're talking ray tracing.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the architectural adjustments from Ampere to Ada, which, like I said, to me don't seem big. There is obviously some things. So you've got the new shader execution reordering, which they showed some figures for improvements to performance. I think it was about 44% in Cyberpunk, but again, that was with ray tracing on. So how much of a difference that will make to your rasterized games, we're obviously still not sure. It does. I think we'll have to probably wait for the white paper to get a closer idea of the the real changes in kind of like the deep architecture of Ada versus Ampere. But definitely on the face of it, I would have said if you take a 150 watt Ampere GPU compared to a 150 watt Ada GPU, the differences probably won't be massive. Certainly not what we saw from the 20 series to the 30 series in laptops. So I think your suspicions may well be correct on that one.
I'm just asking the questions. You're the one that's throwing the shade on NVIDIA here, Dominic. I don't like your prospects. The figures, so we saw relative performance claims from NVIDIA. Yep. The graphs had no numbers worthy of the name. We saw the internal NVIDIA benchmark demo, the little racy thing. Yeah.
The racy
and we
thing.
saw racy thing. What is the racy thing called?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We've seen Flight Sim from Microsoft, which as far as I'm concerned is a version of Google Earth, because they do basically load up a huge great map, don't they? So there's that. And then we saw Cyberpunk many times. Yeah. But it seemed to boil down to me to the, as you've already alluded to, the claim was 2 to 4 times performance, so 4090 versus 4080 presumably. 4090 versus 3090, my apologies. 2 to 4 times performance, and it seemed as though it's 2 times RAS to 4 times ray tracing.
I thought the 2 times figure was referring to just ray tracing, and the 4 times would added in DLS3, but we'd have to see. I don't think we'll see anything near 2 times raster performance.
Thank goodness I'm so glad. I was looking at my notes thinking if they've achieved 2 times raster on this, then that really will be something, even if they've had to push to the big chip to do it. Fine. So we're looking at combination of ray tracing and DLSS, which is the upscaling kind of clever thing. Because they were saying there, weren't they? 7 out of 8 pixels are what was the word? It wasn't inferred.
AI
was it?
generated.
It was calculated. It wasn't.
I think
that was it. Which is as interleaved as you get. I mean, forget frame. I mean, one. That's quite remarkable, depending on how they've done those pixels. Unless they mean they've kind of blown the image up hugely and then, shrunk it down and blown it up. That 7 out of 8 pixels. Have you heard any such metric with the current gen? To any comparison, or has this come out of the blue?
No, I think that was the first time they'd mentioned it. I think it's talking about both the fact that with DLS3 you're still having the traditional upscaling with DLSS like we get with DLS2, but then obviously you've got where it's now inferring a whole new frame. So obviously that's what just simply isn't a thing for DLS2, so that's going to be entirely AI generated, which I guess is the whole point. So that's probably why the first time they're calling it. I think usually if it was just DLS2, the actual number would be significantly lower. So for 4K, for instance, using DLS2, if you had the quality mode enabled, that would be taking a 1440p render and upscaling to 4K. So nothing near 7 out of 8 pixels. So. Yeah.
So excuse me. So with that's very much going to boil down to one more time.
Oh dear.
I know. It's It's the cool air of the UK. So that's going to boil down to quite clearly appraisal of image quality and whether you get weird artifacts going on or whether it looks beautiful. Because quite bluntly, if it works, you don't give a good goddamn how it works, provided you don't require a blazing fast internet connection in the back end to connect to some low latency server. If it's happening in your PC, in your drivers, I mean, graphics drivers now are about 1 gigabyte in size, and with the games that are loaded with NVIDIA tools, their libraries, then at a certain level, fine, provided obviously you don't suddenly get a developer that comes along and says, no, we're not using the NVIDIA libraries, and then the game just breaks utterly. Provided we can avoid that situation, happy. Let's look on briefly as we wrap this up to, I've got a note, actually I've got 2 notes. I'll throw them at you, see if you want to respond or not. First one is, has Jensen been distracted by the ARM deal falling to pieces? Because there are aspects of this launch that's the EVGA thing, for example. I can't imagine that happening in normal times the way it's happened.
It's a good question. I don't know, to be honest. It really depends. It definitely, from what Jensen said yesterday, a lot of this, at least from NVIDIA's perspective, it sounds like a lot of what EVGA, well, considering what they did, it sounds like a lot of it they were kind of thinking about. At least Andrew Han, the CEO, sounds like from NVIDIA's perspective, this was a long time coming. So whether or not the ARM deal would have played into that or not, I'm not sure. But then, obviously, I'm sure NVIDIA is going to spin it one way, EVGA will try and spin it another way. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But to be honest, I don't. If I was NVIDIA and one of their partners went, it's bad PR initially, but I don't know if they really care, to be honest. Like, all the other partners are going to eat up the supply that would have gone to EVGA, no question about it. So, from a heartless consumer perspective, apart from the initial probably damaging PR, do they really care?
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you. As I say, I think we have a slightly different perspective here in the UK because EVGA now, we respect the company. Kingpin is a legend within the industry, and so on and so forth. That's all. Those are just facts, and it so happens of the graphics cards I bought in recent years, half of them been EVGA. So I voted with my own wallet. But the reported words of EVGA's CEO by Gamers Nexus, I interpreted as that Jensen basically regards the partners as parasites. That NVIDIA's doing all this, without NVIDIA there's nothing. They do the stuff. The partners come along and just bung together some graphics cards and market them, stick them in pretty boxes, and they do this stuff. But NVIDIA is what it's all about. And now, clearly the word parasite is my own, but that was how I was interpreting the words. And they're free riders, they're sponges. It's down to us. You guys are getting free money for doing nothing. And it's like, bit harsh. So you almost think, perhaps EVGA bailing means that NVIDIA can walk around going to some other smaller company going, do you want some as well? Or, you saw what happened to, that former company which now does some power supplies. Nonetheless, I am surprised that NVIDIA didn't come out and directly address it. Just because, but they clearly have just decided, that's who?
Yeah.
There we have it. I've also got a comment here about crypto over the past couple of years, but I can't be bothered because it's too depressing. The Ethereum merge, I think, hopefully has helped us all now, but the last 2 years have been hideous. So, moving on to wrap up, NVIDIA RTX 4000 will be available 12th of October. And just going back to that financial quarter thing, therefore technically Q3, because November is the start of their fourth quarter. And then AMD will announce RDNA 3 on the 3rd of November.
Yep.
Oh, AMD, you little jokers. What are you expecting from AMD?
I think I'm expecting they'll be competitive again. Whether or not, I think we might see more in the way of extra features that we haven't previously seen from AMD. Obviously, we don't know much about the RDNA 3 architecture at all yet, but they have said 50% better performance per watt, which they also said going from first gen RDNA to RDNA 2, and RDNA 2 definitely in the high end was very successful. The RX 6800 was particularly efficient. So I'm personally expecting good things. I think you've already addressed the point, but when I first heard the NVIDIA pricing, I definitely thought there was a door open for AMD. But then again, I can't imagine they can do anything else than come in maybe $50 below and try and be similar in terms of performance. I think anything else, while we would obviously love it and we'd want it for the consumers, from a business perspective, unfortunately, I can't see anything else happening. Well, hopefully I'm wrong, but yeah, I think
so RX 7900 at £1,600 here in the UK. Dominic predicts here and now
something like that, maybe. Yeah, I think definitely, as long as, depending if AMD changes their strategy drastically, which I don't think they'd do, throughout RDNA 2 versus the 30 series, they would come in slightly below because obviously the ray tracing performance was inferior. But in terms of general rasterization performance, very competitive and just a little bit cheaper. So nominally giving you that value perspective, but not by much.
And the word already is that AMD, I can't remember who the alleged source for this is that AMD is not expecting to catch up on ray tracing with the new NVIDIA cards. So the way I'm interpreting that is, if ray tracing's your thing, then new NVIDIA for the win. Sorry, oh God, that's really tasteless.
Oh dear.
I'm so sorry, EVGA. Yes, then new NVIDIA for the ray tracing for the RT. If on the other hand, if you're interested in value for money, well, I mean, 50 quid out of 1,600 is, or a grand or 1,200 is drop in the ocean. It would need to be 100 or 200 to make much difference. On the other hand, as AMD's demonstrated with Intel, the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. NVIDIA just has the mind share. They rule the market in gaming graphics. So the only way for AMD to go forward is to take share off NVIDIA. But if NVIDIA drops from 90%, what are they at, 95% at the moment? Huge market share. Then AMD has huge potential, but the thing is that they're not going to get much of a win from the next process, so it has to be down to new technology. Whereas NVIDIA moving from Samsung to TSMC has just given them monumental extra die area.
Yeah, we know for sure RDNA 3 is moving to a chiplet-based design. Obviously, like we saw with Ryzen. So how much of a benefit that's going to have, we're going to have to wait and see. So far, they're understandably being very light on the details, so I think we're really going to have to wait for the initial announcement and then further details to follow before we can really speculate.
However, coming soon, so hurrah. A busy time for you doing both NVIDIA and then AMD graphics. I've got some Intel stuff to look at. Luke's working flat out with Zen 4 at this very moment, and then we're going to have a wave of motherboards coming after. Let's finish up on a slightly cheery note, hopefully. Which game is going to be your game for the end of this year, the start of next year? Because I'm looking around and I'm scratching my head.
That's a very good question. I've liked what I've seen of Forspoken, which is also meant to use direct storage, so that'll be interesting. I think that one's actually going to be sponsored by AMD. Obviously, that was delayed.
They've been bigging that up.
Yeah, it was delayed. I think it was meant to be May, and it's been pushed back to the end of the year. So I'm looking forward to testing that one. And also Uncharted Legacy of Thieves finally landing for the PC on October, which Uncharted is right up my street. So I think that'll be
yes,
good.
yes, no, quite agree. First played the early one of that on PlayStation 3, as I recall. Good lord. No, this is good. This is positive stuff, and it means that we can be cheery and perky as we finish up. So I'm going to finish up. I'm Leo for Kit Guru, interrogating my colleague Dominic. Say goodbye, Dominic.
Thanks for watching, guys.
he's he's had the liveliness beaten out of him by this interrogation.
No, it's been a pleasure, Leo. I look forward to doing it again. I'm sure we can do another one for RDNA 3.
Oh, I hope so too. And when they announce the next of these series and such like. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell button, ring the bell button, comment below, and tell us where we got everything right and everything wrong. Much appreciated. This is Leo checking out.